is Nannuoshan. I'm Gabriele. Welcome to the third class or third 101 tea class series about white tea. Today it is the last time that we speak about white tea. Originally I thought I will do maximum 2 hours on white tea, and this is the third hour, and honestly I am a little bit scared about starting with green tea next time, because if I spend already 3 hours only on white tea, on green tea there is really a lot to say, but luckily we are not on a hurry. We are taking it just easy, drinking a tea, whatever you have, best if it is a white tea, will be an hour today together, slow pace. There is not a lot of preparation behind these tea classes, so it's good, let's say, if you have something else to do while listening to me, so that I don't have to entertain you all the time when I'm pull up information or I'm thinking what to say. Say that during the first two tea classes about white tea, we spoke a lot, or actually only, about Fujian white tea. And this is because although we mentioned that we couldn't really say that the white tea was invented and was born in Fujian, it is certainly white tea as we know it today that comes from there, from the Fujian area. And therefore everything that I would say we will speak about today is somewhat related to what we have discussed over the past 2 hours. Nonetheless, white tea is not only produced in Fujian, also in other regions. So as we did also last time, if anyone of those that are online right now with me on the video call know what is, let's say, the second most famous location for traditional white tea, like which other place in China besides Fujian and Fujian is famous for traditionally famous, let's say, over the centuries for white tea production. While I'm switching to the chat just in case someone is writing something and doesn't feel like speak up, although you can speak. I see that someone is writing.
So I heard Yunnan makes white tea, the Yue Guang Bai, but yeah, I'm not sure how famous it is.
So thank you, Georgi, for speaking up. It doesn't matter if you say it right or you say it wrong. That's why we are in a tea class, but it's important to speak out. And certainly Yunnan is another famous place for white tea. The most famous one is the one you mentioned, Yue Guang Bai. We will speak about it today. So in a way, that's the correct answer. However, when I made my question, I paid attention to repeating traditional white tea that has been produced there for centuries. And actually, if we consider this one aspect, the correct answer is no one. There is no other place that I know, I said, than Fujian or Fujian, where we have been producing white tea for several centuries, and that it is recognized with a specific name and a specific heritage, right? There could be places where there has been white tea production, and we said last time that probably white tea was produced way earlier than when he receives the label white tea. But nonetheless, even the famous Yue Guang Bai from Yunnan is actually a relatively modern introduction. So Yunnan has been more famous in the past for green tea and certainly for pu'er. It came last among the famous black tea between the First and the Second World War, and came even later with white tea, which in the sense where Yue Guang Bai was probably introduced just about 20-30 years ago, something like that. And there is not only Yue Guang Bai among the white tea produced in Yunnan. There is, for example, also this one, the one that I'm breaking up right now. I'll go for just 4 grams. And why I'm brewing this tea, maybe another question is what's, in your opinion, the right temperature for brewing white tea? And here there is no really correct answer because everyone can brew it as they want, but I'm just interested to hear what do you usually do. Then I tell you what I have here on my kettle as a temperature. No, that's the wrong one. Black Moa is typing, so I'm waiting for at least one reply.
So, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay. My answer might be obvious to you. It's 100 degrees,
so
as always. But there are exceptions, of course.
So Mao Zedong says 100 degrees. That's the temperature he brews white tea with some exceptions. And then we have Black Moa.
I think you down to 90 degrees and get pretty good brews, and depending on the white tea, it also fits better. But I think if you go lower than that, like 80 degrees, it lacks a lot of body. So I wouldn't go under 90.
So you wouldn't go under 90 or even 80. Then we have Black Moa is saying 85 to 100 degrees, so quite a wide range. I have here 94 right now for this tea. And it's a matter of preference, of course, but I would say that generally speaking, the good aspect of white tea is that rarely gets bitter, and so you can play with temperature as you want. Like if you like it thinner, lighter, you go for lower temperature or even cold brew. If you want more body, then you go for 90 and 100 degrees. But different than other tea, I wouldn't say we can really speak about we can't really speak about right temperature and wrong temperature. So now, before proceeding, and as mentioned last time, last 2 hours we spent discussing fooding baicha. And if we want to summarize that one, we could simply mention the 3 most famous white tea that are produced in the northern Fujian area. But I would rather start, let's see how this works again, sharing my screen and showing you the website, and we start from there. Share screen. All right, so now you should see the screen. I'm realizing actually I have to change the first photo there. It's no more that new that we have Bajak Teaware on stock. But we go now to white tea. And if we briefly scroll, we see there is a lot of stuff sold out, which I mean is good for us, less good for you because there's nothing to buy. But the good news is that actually we have just received a large amount of tea, including baicha in Berlin, and we have a delivery expected in Austin for the same very teas in 3 days. So you should get new white tea very soon. Now, if we ignore for a moment the sold out label and we have a look at what we have here, right on the first line we have the 3 names I was talking about. If you remember, Shoumei, Bai Mudan, and Bai Hao in Gen, you have the 3 main teas, and it's pretty much everything you need to know as a start about fooding baicha, and not only fooding, also other places. Now if we scroll down and we skip a little bit what we have been discussed last time, we see that there is a sold out Yue Guang Bai. This is the tea that Georgi was referring to. We will have a look at it in a moment. That's from Yunnan. And if you scroll further down, we have one more from Yunnan, one more from Yunnan, one more from Yunnan. This is Lysis of Baicha, is the one I'm having now. So yes, there is a lot of white tea in Yunnan, but not only actually, like not right now on the shop, but in the past we had also white tea from India, from the Darjeeling area. We had white tea from Japan. It was not online, but we offered it as a special edition last year at the Berlin Tea Festival. I can anticipate to you, we will have this year also a white tea from Taiwan. And when I was in Kenya last year, I visited some tea plantation and they were also selling white tea. Now, besides the places that I've seen myself, I know that there is white tea production also in Vietnam. There is white tea production also in Thailand. Certainly Nepal is getting famous recently, in particular for white tea, but not only. So we could say that there is white tea pretty much everywhere around the world. But the interesting thing to me is that everything started from fooding, in the sense that everyone is looking at fooding white tea when they do their own white tea. And they decide maybe to modify that process intentionally, but that's the reference. So what we're talking about before is the reference. So now, and I'm kind of thinking out loud where we should approach tea. I would say, since we have so much from Yunnan, and in Yunnan there is nowadays a fairly large white tea production. Like if you go in a tea market in Yunnan, you will see a lot of pu'er, of course, quite a lot of green tea, but also white tea, so it's present. So I think what we can do is sharing again my screen, and we can open that, the only one, Yue Guang Bai, that we have here. Click on it, and we can have a look at it. So Yue Guang Bai means moonlight white. Yue means moon in Chinese, and is also the way that this tea is also often referred to in English. It is called moonlight white tea for a series of reasons. We don't really know which one is true, but you can make your guess. So one story goes that Yue Guang Bai, differently than food in Baicha, is not withered, is not dry at the sun, but is dried and withered overnight, so under moonlight. That's one of the stories. The other story is that if you look at the tea, it is fairly white, but also fairly dark. If you take a leaf, one side is whitish, like this leaf here, and the back side is black. You can see it here. So like on the moon, there is always a side that is illuminated by the sun, and then we have the dark side of the moon. Also here you have every leaf, unless the buds, when it is open up, that has these two sides, one that is fairly oxidized, the white, the other one that is whitish because it's covered by the hair, and this is also another reason why it could have been called this way. Now, name by side, this Yue Guang Bai is a tea, but I mean that's the easy part. Let's say that's the story you can find everywhere. Is the tea? So I go a little bit quick. Is the tea that comes from the Pu'er prefecture, pretty much in the center of Yunnan. The most famous one, or I would say the original one, come from Jinggu, which I think is a county in Pu'er. But generally speaking, the whole Pu'er prefecture is actually famous for white tea, for this type of white tea. It is done with a series of cultivar. Let's see, this one here, for example, is with the Yun Kang number 10, which is a cultivar that is used often for Yue Guang Bai, but not only. It's also used for Shen Pu'er, for example. And there are other cultivars that are used for Yue Guang Bai. It's not maybe a little bit differently than what we're seeing for Fujian Bai Cha. It's not just one or two cultivars that are used for this tea. There is quite a bit of them. And in terms of taste, it is, I would say, let me say one thing before really trying to find adjective and describing it. It has a very characteristic taste. It's like if you know how Yue Guang Bai tastes, you recognize it blind, and you learn the taste very quickly because it is so unique. It is like, I don't know, red ruby in Taiwan. I was discussing with Karsten before in a previous call, red ruby. Red ruby is a characteristic black tea that is very, very peculiar. You recognize it right away. Longing, very peculiar taste, you recognize it right away. Yue Guang Bai, same story. You may like it or not, but it's a very characteristic taste. And this is, I think, good for defining a category of tea, because it's also defined not only by the processing or where it comes from, also by the taste. And this is also what makes often tea famous. Biluochun and Longjing are famous not only because they have a specific production or they come from a specific place, because they have a very characteristic taste. And nonetheless, if we want to speak more about the taste, it is certainly a tea that has more body, is fuller than a Fujian Bai Cha, especially in the early years, in the early stage. It's also suitable for aging, like is the case for Fujian Bai Cha, but is less advertised so, and so you don't find a lot of aged Yue Guang Bai. I remember having done long ago, I think, a YouTube video about Yue Guang Bai, and I had some viewer commenting really sharp and saying that Yue Guang Bai is only done, honestly I don't even remember exactly, but I think he was saying it's only done with a specific type of picking, and I think he was saying either he was saying one bud and two leaves, or he was saying one bud and one leaf, I don't remember. And to my knowledge, that's not correct. And I have never seen and never heard of Yue Guang Bai being labeled also with a specific picking, like similarly to Fujian Bai Cha. As far as I know, you can have just different picking. And while in Fujian, you call one Shou Mei, the other Bai Modan, the other Bai Hao Injen. Here, usually get the same name, but at the end it's the same tea, it's just different picking. So we had in the past, for example, actually I want to see if I can find it for you, just a moment. So you see there are these moments where I just need some time to find things. Okay, and just checking on my database or our back shop to find, yeah, actually I found it. A Yue Guang Bai that is made with buds only. We didn't purchase this tea recently, but some time ago we had one. And is this tea here. Maybe this is also a good way. Let me do like this. I open, although the tea is not online, I can preview it. You see, it is an archived product. You learn a little bit of Shopify, but I can preview that one. And you see, this is another cultivar, 2022, and interestingly, at that time we mentioned 80 degrees of water temperature. Interesting, I'm saying, because I wouldn't do the same today. If we look at this picture and you recall the appearance of Bai Hao Injen from Fujian, you notice a difference. Like, this is really whitish golden yellow, while the Fujian Bai Cha, when it's very young, is more white green, and then it just becomes darker. So this golden color is what helps you recognizing a Yue Guang Bai just by the look at it. Like if you look at, like if I look at this tea, even not knowing, I would guess with a good level of confidence that this is Yue Guang Bai, and it comes from Yunnan. And this is a trend that you see also here. Is a little bit more yellowish. This is also an easy way, let's say, to recognize Yue Guang Bai. It's not personally a tea that I drink often because it doesn't have really a profile that appeals me. To me, it's a little bit metallic in taste, and I've tried many. Sometimes I drink them. I prefer them actually as cold brew rather than hot tea. But that's just personal taste. It's actually pretty popular on our website, so it seems that our customers don't have exactly the same taste as I have as far as this tea at least. And now we can look at other teas that there are online and see if we can tell more about that and about white tea in general. We have okay, so we should definitely speak about this one here. We call this tea Xiangshui Bai Cha. As often we give the name to the tea that was given by the producer. So we tend not to invent names or make up names. So even when we know that the tea, it's not this case, but even when we know that the tea may not be labeled 100% right, if that's the way they are selling it and this is their tea, why should I change that? And in this case, this tea can be called also in different ways, but the word, let me say, it's also a famous white tea from Yunnan. So before speaking about the name, maybe let's have a look at how it looks. Actually, I'm sharing. Yes, I'm sharing. It has little buds that you see here, and it has this violet purple color. So this comes from the specific cultivar. So also here, when you see a tea that looks more or less like this, you know what cultivar there is behind, and also you know it is a white tea. It is you can find it in several shops nowadays, and from different places, different area, and the taste can be. It is similar, but can be also quite diverse. Like for me, Yue Guang Bai is more standard taste. Here there are big differences. It's great that even if you forget your brew with white tea, it just gets darker but not bitter. That's actually the perfect tea for me giving tea classes. And this specific tea, we call it, or actually the producer call it Xiang Shui. Two very important words, not only in Chinese in general, but in the world of Chinese tea, because Xiang is a word that you hear all the time, especially related to dancong, but not only, and it means aroma. And Shui means water. And a little bit similar to German, also in this case, Chinese like to combine words together to give meaning. Like in German, I don't know, a toy in German is Spielzeug, which means the thing to play with. Instead of inventing, like in English, a word by itself, toy, they just say is the thing to play with. And here is the aromatic water is actually perfume. Like the perfume you will put on your body. That's what's called Xiangshui in Chinese. Bai Cha means white tea, so it is the perfume white tea. Guess why it's called like that? Because it's incredibly aromatic. Is one of the most aromatic cultivar, maybe the most aromatic cultivar that I know. in this particular batch comes from Nannuoshan, which means a big snow mountain, and it is in the Linzan prefecture in Yunnan, at an altitude of 3,000 meters. There are very high mountains there, and it comes from big trees. You see those trees here, and how the buds look when they are still on the tree. And this is a photo from the producer. I think it's important to remember the cultivar is this one here. You don't have to remember it. I mean, I would never remember the name, but I recognize the first character, which is Z. Probably my pronunciation is wrong, but we can check what's the right one. You remember I mentioned already these website where you can check Chinese tea lexicon. Is very well done. I know that if I search only zi, I probably won't find it. So the first tea that I'm sure it is on this database that I can think of is the zisun, which is the purple bamboo shoot. And you see that is a third tone. So it means that it is zi, something like that. So third tone means you go first down and then back up. Zi, something like that. And this means purple, so it is an indication of the cultivar having this purple color. It's a classic when this is not the only cultivar, there are other cultivars that have some purple in it, and they often come with the zi in the name. Okay, let's speak maybe about other type of tea, and I will take these two teas as let's say a category. First of all, you see that the two teas look similar. They have nothing to do with each other. They come even from different location. And by the way, there is a question from Frank: is this cultivar specifically always purple? So this specific cultivar that we've seen before is purple in the shoots, in the you can see here, but not in the large leaves. When it develops, it's green. But it's not the only purple cultivar. Actually, there are tons of cultivars that have a purple color in it. Even Dahong Pao had a little bit of red in it, although it's not a cultivar, but cultivar used for Dahong Pao. And there are also other. And there are also cultivars that have a little bit of purple in the developed leaves, in the grown leaves. Okay, back to our similar teas. These and this one come from different places. This is a producer we have been working for quite a while, and if you've been buying shampoo from Nannuoshan, you are very likely to have been drinking some tea from this producer. And this is another producer from Nannuoshan, Nannuo Mountain. Julin Tsung is a village on Nannuo Mountain that we have visited also during the Yunnan tea tour last year. And the commonality that what they have in common is the shape, right? I mean, it's clear this is a flat slice. And this is what I'm drinking now. You see it here with a line in the middle, so you can just break it. You have 4 grams each. And the other one is also kind of similar. And this already shows that it's not just by chance that they are similar. It's also because there is a new trend that we've said developed in Fujian since about 2006, and is pressing white tea. That of course is also done in Yunnan, where anyway also pressed tea has more heritage with pu'er. And there is also this new trend of having compressed tea in single portions. That is a little bit more convenient. It's convenient for shipping, and also it's convenient for pouring. So this is something you will see. Now, this is just about the specific shape. You can find also many other press shape. Very classic is Dragon Balls. I think we have seen last time. Small spheres, about 6 to 8 grams each, or even Bincha, full cake. But these two teas that I showed you are representative not only of the category small pressed white tea, but they're representative of the category that I would call general Yunnan white tea. This means that pretty much every producer, if they want, they can produce white tea. And this is what these two guys are doing and what many other people are doing. They don't belong to a category like Yue Guang Bai or like the purple that we've seen before, where you can instantly recognize it, but they belong just to the general category that you could say is Dian Bai Cha, just inventing the name. Dian is short for Yunnan, like Dian Hong, and so it's a white tea from Yunnan. And is not uncommon really that poor producer also produce white tea. Just maybe they have excess of leaves or they want to experiment a little bit. They use exactly the same leaves as for pu'er, and the process is as white tea. And this brings me actually to a story that I want to share with you from long ago. I'm 100% sure that I already mentioned this story in some YouTube video, but not recently, so maybe a little refresh. So 2010 is the first time I traveled to China for tea, and I went to Yunnan. So it's already a while ago, 16 years ago, and I went to Yunnan, and long story short, I ended up in a tea farm on Nannuoshan, specialized of course in shampoo. So we were two of us, and we were drinking their tea that we found extremely bitter. It's classic it's classic plantation tea, a lot of sun on it. It was August, later in the season. It was just insane bitter, but they are used to bitterness, and we were drinking there for hours. And at a certain point we said, okay, let's take an excuse that we want to do a little walk so that we can stop drinking tea. And so we went out of the courtyard where they has this little tea hut where we were having the tea. We walk 10 meters and the neighbor invited us to drink tea. I say, I mean, it's just like, 4 steps, and we were actually forced to go back in and drink again tea. And he has indoor, in a room, he has some leaves spread out to wither or drying, I don't remember. And he prepared the tea. We drank the tea that looked exactly like the mao cha that we were drinking in the other tea hut, like these large leaves, as you know, mao cha, and so raw pu'er tea unpressed. And we drank the tea already expecting this insane bitterness, and the tea was not bitter at all. And so we say, all right, we just went in the wrong house, unfortunately, and we had already a deal with that house to spend there 3 days, and the neighbor is producing so much better shampoo, and now we get stuck with that. And then when we spoke with him, I don't even remember how we were able to speak with him, because I didn't speak nearly a word of Chinese at that time. And he said, oh, no, this is not shampoo, this is Bai Cha, it's white tea. And I asked, oh, wow, where did you get this from? How did you do it? And he pointed out to a tea, one single tea tree that he had at the entrance. And he said, yes, I did it I just picked leaves from that tree and I just dried them and I got white tea. And I bought a little bit of that white tea, took it with me at home, was just maybe 100 grams. I kept it over the years, and just in very special occasion I wanted to drink that tea, but unfortunately after a few years it was no more tasting of nothing. Not bad, not good, just and the reason I think is that was not properly dried. was still a little bit wet, and then it lost all the aroma. But this just to show you that back in 2010 was kind of normal for people in Yunnan to, produce some white tea, right? And 2010 is barely the beginning of Yue Guang Bai. Yue Guang Bai, what I read yesterday, because I was doing a search about Yue Guang Bai, I found that it was officialized between 2006 and 2008. And so it's a relatively modern tea. And here I'm speaking just of 2 to 4 years later, in a completely different region of Yunnan, they were anyway producing white tea, and probably they were doing that for much longer time. So you have this whole category that as a tea enthusiast, I invite you actually to explore more, and it is just random white tea. And you can find really some really good tea, and that in my opinion are way more pleasant actually than Yue Guang Bai, personal opinion, but also they are way cheaper, usually way cheaper than a tea from Fujian of the same quality. And of course, you have less consistency, so you have also to be lucky with the tea you get. But since you don't spend a lot of money doing that, it's certainly worth exploring. All right, so I would say this is pretty much everything I have to say about white tea in Yunnan. So we have, to my knowledge, these two big categories, Yue Guang Bai, and then we have what we call Xiangshui Bai Cha. I think other people call it Baya, like white bud. I'm not sure, there are other naming, but it's these little purple buds. And then we have everything else about white tea. Nonetheless, I think it's also worth exploring what is done in other countries. As of today, we don't have on our shop any other white tea from other countries, but every time I find one that I like, I bring it up to the store. And I will mention now, for example, and maybe I can find it again and show it to you so that you have also a visualization of it. Sharing. So this is a tea, is an organic tea that we call organic Indian peony. It's just a random name because in this case the producer was calling it just white tea. And if I open the preview of this long sold out white tea, it says April 2018 from this specific estate in Darjeeling. You know, in Darjeeling there are about 80 different estates. So this is a specific estate in Darjeeling, of course specialized in Darjeeling tea, black tea, but they also do white tea, and they're not the only one. Like, it's kind of common, and I think the Darjeeling is very well suited for white tea. And the story of this tea is that, did I mention it here? No, they mentioned the story. Well, you can look at the leaves. Consider that this photo was done back in 2018. So this is how the leaves were looking already at that time. A little bit darker than what you would expect from today's fresh Baimudan, but also with that characteristic darker side that we have seen in Yue Guang Bai, interestingly. Now, the story of this tea is the following. I was on an EasyJet flight to Berlin, and I was 2017, and I was preparing a PowerPoint for a tea tasting, where it was the tea tasting combined with a presentation. And then at a certain point, the guy next to me told me a strong Indian accent that he couldn't help noticing that I was in the tea business and was preparing something about tea. And he told me, I have actually a tea plantation in Darjeeling, and I'm traveling through Europe to visit some of my customers. And so we started discussing it, this and that, and I pretty much told him that yeah, we are more specialized in smaller realities. You know, these Darjeeling estates are really extensive, because also the minimum purchase quantity by these large estates are massive, right? It's not something that we Nannuoshan would buy directly. We could buy Darjeeling tea, but we have to go to wholesaler, while we like actually to buy directly at the source. And then actually he agreed in selling me some tea from his real estate at relatively small quantity. It was still relatively large, and one of that was this white tea. And so it's a tea that I'm a little bit sorry that is sold out, because I really liked it a lot. It is unlikely that it was dried at the sun in classic fooding style. It probably was more of a larger production and don't have the space to really dry at the sun, but it was really, really a very good taste. And 2 years ago, in Japan, it happened something similar. I was on Tanegashima Island in the very south to buy completely different teas, and the farmer is experimenting a lot and had this tea that he called Nanmei. I really like it, so I bought just a small portion of it, and we presented it in the Berlin Tea Festival last year. Also here, Japan, yes, there is some white tea production, but is, I would say, way less than 0.1% of the whole Japanese tea production. It's basically non-existing. And considering every time I was traveling in Japan, I think this is the only white tea that I have encountered. And this year happened a similar story in Taiwan, also certainly not the country famous for white tea, but we have a new farmer we are working with that I met this year for the first time, and we will introduce it to you when the time comes. And he also produces a white tea. It was very expensive. Like to give you a reference, it was more expensive than our handmade Donding from Taiwan. So really expensive tea. And but nonetheless, let's say I couldn't help buying a portion of it, and we will offer it on the site because it's really good. This farmer does everything by hand, and it took to him a whole week of hand work to produce the tea, between several days of withering, several days of drying, and since he otherwise had relatively good pricing, I trusted that, as he explained to me, the reason why this tea was more expensive is because the sheer amount of time he had to invest in producing it. So this will also come later this year, probably somewhere. Also, maybe as a last aspect about white tea outside of China, even within China, the processing tends to differ quite a bit with respect to what we have seen in fooding. Like we just mentioned, fooding, it's key to dry the tea at the sun, right? It's one of the aspects that makes high quality fooding by cha so famous. And to the point that actually in China, it is associated with the sun, the tea from fooding. And then we have seen Yue Guang Bai, they say probably, oh no, wait, we're not gonna do this huge effort of having to dry it at the sun. Let's make up a story so that we can, let's say, dry the tea under the moonlight, and it's a perfect marketing. We call it moonlight white, and instead of saying that we want, I'm just inventing now, but maybe that's the way it went. Instead of mentioning that we're not drying it at the sun because it's too much effort, we mentioned that we are drying it at night under moonlight, which is even more effort. And so you have, and the farther you go from fooding, the more the technique diverges. And what they have in common is the fact that there is no kill the green, differently than green tea. You pick up the leaves and you let the leaves dry in some ways without introducing heat to stop the enzymatic oxidation process. And as you have seen in the picture I showed today, you can always see a little bit of oxidation. Maybe not so much in the buds only that are really kept very fresh, but in the other teas. And then, depending whether the tea was dried at the end at a relatively high temperature or not, in the oven or not, you can have a faster or a slower aging. See some questions here that I missed, so let me read through that. Next to Yunnan and fooding, Zhenghe is different than those two, or did you speak about that last time? Yes, it was spoken about that last time, so we spent quite some time in speaking about Zhenghe and fooding. In a word, Zhenghe and fooding are pretty much the same thing, it's the same area, and just the fooding is more famous. And if you review the previous YouTube video, I also shared a lot of photos from when I was visiting both fooding and Zhenghe. So there is a lot explained there. Another question, is there any special storage recommendations for white tea or any differences to store cakes versus bud? So I would say difference to store cakes versus bud, I personally don't do any difference between them. And in terms of storage, I store them in my drawers as any other tea, but I would say that white tea, since it's meant for aging, is good to not put it in the fridge basically. So but the classic principle apply, away from heat sources, away from sunlight, and I usually leave it in the bag. It's like I don't wrap it in paper just to increase the contact with the air, stuff that I don't do. Maybe the only aspect is that if you have a very fresh white tea, like a very fresh Bayamudan or Shomei even, and that very green, flush green color, and you want to preserve that for longer than 6 months because you bought a larger quantity, then it might be useful to store it in the fridge. It's a little bit of a risky things because it's something that I never tried myself, but in theory it should work and you should be able to preserve that fresh taste for longer. But other than that, I have no special recommendation than for any other tea that I can think of. This tea we will have also this year. We will have also another white tea that is a new entry, and we have our main supplier for Tongmuguan Genshan Shaozong, black tea from Tongmuguan, that experimented this year and decided to produce with the same bushes they use for Genshan Shaozong. They decided to produce white tea. So I tasted it in Fujian just a few months ago, and it was during the tea tour, but it was, let's say, maybe those that are online right now and that were this year for the tea tour can help you remembering, but I think this was not a tea that we drank with all the customers that participated to the tea tour. It was more of a side tasting that we did in the evening as part of the selection process for the Nannuoshan tea. So this also to reinforce the fact that any producer in China and abroad can experiment a little bit and produce white tea, because at the end there is not much to how can I say, you don't need a lot of tools, a lot of processing. At the end, you just pick up the leaves and you can experiment a little bit with withering, a little bit with drying, and that's it, right? And I don't remember now if during the past 2 hours about white tea, if I shared with you the tea that we picked and produced last year during the tea tour in Yunnan. Did I? Remember. I did? You did. Okay, perfect. So you can check out there, but this is basically another indication that you know, if I can do it, and it was a pretty good results, pretty much everyone can. Like, you pick up the leaves, you put it in a bag, you let them dry, and if the leaves are good, you get a very good white tea. It's as simple as that. All right, I think that's it. We won't make 100% the full hour today. I cannot think about anything else I want to share about white tea. With that, we have closed the white tea chapter. And I see some comments here. Thank you, especially appreciated learning about Shanshui Bai Cha, since it's one of the most enjoyable teas I've tried. Yeah, it's really this Shanshui Bai Cha. Of course, you have to like aromatic tea because it's all about aroma, but it's a tea that you don't have to drink a lot of it, you know, just a small portion. I think everyone can enjoy it. It's like yeah, you have to try, just so unique. But yeah, say that next week we will start over with a new category, green tea. It comes at the right time, maybe just a tiny bit too early, because we just received all the green tea that we have been sourcing this year, so it will take a little bit of a while to release all of those, make the photos, the product description. There is a lot to do. But we were just discussing about releasing a few of them already at the end of this month, even if we don't have yet a description of them, so that you can get those fresh green teas as soon as possible. Besides that, in case you have it at home, next week I will drink the Ganlu Superior. That is a tea from this year, and we got an early batch in March of very early green tea, so this is the one I will drink next week. If you want to join me, just get prepared with the green tea, and we will start with I assume the basics about green tea, the most famous one, and then over the following hours we will deepen into more rare aspects of green tea. All right, thank you everyone, and I will see you at the next one.